The kingdom was a peaceful place, with rolling green hills, babbling brooks, and happy villagers. The villagers were simple folk, farmers, bakers, blacksmiths and weavers, who worked hard and enjoyed their simple lives. At the heart of the kingdom sat the royal castle, with its tall towers and flying banners. The castle was home to the wise King Wilhelm and his gentle Queen Genevieve, along with their 3 children, the young Princes Stefan and Nikolai, and the beautiful Princess Anastasia. Princess Anastasia, called Anya for short, was a free spirit who longed for adventure. While her brothers studied swordsmanship and archery, Anya could often be found riding her white stallion Artemis across the countryside, the wind whipping through her long red hair. She spoke to all she met, wealthy lords and penniless beggars alike. Her parents despaired over her unladylike ways, but Anya's wild heart could not be tamed. Deep in the dark forest on the kingdom's border, there lived a strange hermit named Rumpelstiltskin. He was a short, twisted man with a crooked back and a wild look in his eyes. Rumpelstiltskin knew magic and spells, and he used his dark powers to brew potions to serve his evil ends. He lived alone in a decrepit cottage, hidden by the shadowy trees. The villagers feared the forest and dared not enter, for it was said strange noises and lights came from the depths at night. One sunny morning, Anya set off on Artemis for one of her long rides. The air was crisp and sweet, and she wanted to explore a different part of the kingdom today. Anya rode for hours, passing babbling streams and mossy boulders, waving to the occasional farmer or peddler on the forest road. Eventually, she found herself in an unfamiliar, close part of the forest. The trees grew so densely here that barely any sunlight shone through. It was very quiet, even the birds did not sing. The air felt heavy and still. Anya pulled her cloak closer around her shoulders, suddenly uneasy. She was about to turn Artemis around when she spotted a flickering light ahead through the trees. Curious, she rode towards it until she reached the edge of a small clearing. Peering through the bushes, her eyes widened in surprise. There stood a tiny cottage she had never seen before. The windows glowed, and a thin plume of smoke wafted from the chimney. Anya guessed this must be where the strange hermit Rumpelstiltskin lived. She knew she should turn back immediately, but her insatiable curiosity rooted her to the spot. As she watched, the cottage door creaked open. That's when Anya got her first look at the terrifying Rumpelstiltskin. He was just as hideous as the stories said, but now up close. He was impossibly small and hunched over, with a large bald head and crooked teeth. His clothes were filthy rags, and his hands were gnarled like tree branches. Collecting herself, Anya turned Artemis around and rode off into the trees as fast as she could. Rumpelstiltskin's evil cackle followed her all the way out of the woods. When Anya got home, she told her brothers all about her disturbing encounter. Stefan and Nikolai were fascinated, but they could also see how shaken their sister was. They decided that very night to sneak off into the dark forest and find Rumpelstiltskin's cottage themselves. The 3 royal siblings set off on their horses, armed only with their courage and a flaming torch to light their way. Before long, they reached the clearing with the hermit's cottage. They hesitated at the edge, utterly terrified at being so close to such evil. But the princely brothers knew they must protect their kingdom from this darkness. Nikolai raised his sword and boldly walked up to bang on the splintered old door. No answer came. After some arguing, Stefan and Anya got down to join Nikolai. With all their might, the 3 shoved open the door. The cottage was empty. There was no sign of Rumpelstiltskin or his vile magic. Cobwebs draped every surface, but otherwise it seemed abandoned. The siblings searched every corner, but the evil hermit was gone. They had no idea where, but at least he wasn't lurking so close to their kingdom anymore. Their bravery had driven him away. When the king and queen heard of their children's courageous deed, they were alarmed but also quite proud. The dark forest seemed safer, and over the next months, the villagers reported strange sounds and lights less and less often. Life in the kingdom continued as normal, though the royal children still trained their combat skills just in case. One day, several months later, a great thunderstorm hit the kingdom. Rain lashed the castle windows relentlessly all night long. In the howling wind, no one heard the intruder slip over the ramparts and enter through a low window. As lightning flashed, the hooded figure crept up the winding staircase to Princess Anya's room in the tower. He knew an unlocked window awaited him there. The intruder, of course, was none other than Rumpelstiltskin, returned to take revenge. Soaked and as crazed as ever, he slithered up to the sleeping Anya's bedside, a long curved dagger glinting in his bony hand. But just as he raised his arm to strike, Anya awoke. Her self-defense training served her well. She immediately kicked out her leg and knocked the dagger from Rumpelstiltskin's grasp. It went clattering across the stone floor. Anya leapt out of bed and fumbled for the hidden rope by her wardrobe. As Rumpelstiltskin screeched and tried to grab her, Anya yanked on the rope hard. Down in their adjoining rooms, Stefan and Nikolai were instantly awakened by the ringing of Anya's emergency alarm. Grabbing swords, they raced up in their nightclothes to their sister's aid. Rumpelstiltskin tried to flee, but Nikolai was too fast for him. After a struggle, the brothers apprehended the villain. Surrounded at last, Rumpelstiltskin broke down wailing and begging for mercy. The kingdom was safe again thanks to the quick wits and bravery of the royal children. King Wilhelm decreed that very day that Rumpelstiltskin would be locked in the dungeons for the rest of his life for his evil deeds. There the vile hermit stayed, festering in the dark, sealed far below the castle. Anya, Stefan, Nikolai and all the kingdom could rest easy once more. Tales of the royal children's triumph over the dark magic of Rumpelstiltskin were told for ages to come. The beautiful Princess Anya went on to become a just, adventurous queen who was beloved by all. Stefan and Nikolai grew into wise kings themselves. And they all lived happily ever after. The end. Once upon a time, there lived a beautiful unicorn named Starlight. Starlight had a shiny white coat and a magical, rainbow-colored horn on her forehead. She lived happily in an enchanted forest with all of her unicorn friends. One morning, Starlight woke up feeling different. When she looked in the pond to brush her hair, she noticed something terrible. Her horn was gone. "Oh no!" cried Starlight. "How will I use my magic without my horn?" She tried with all her might to use her magic powers, but nothing happened. Starlight was devastated that she could no longer use her special magic. Starlight decided to go to her wise friend, Merlin the wizard, for help. She found Merlin in his cozy cottage in the woods. "Merlin, something terrible has happened. My horn is missing and now I can't use my magic anymore," Starlight exclaimed. Merlin stroked his long white beard thoughtfully. This is troubling indeed," said Merlin. "But do not worry, we will find a solution." Merlin opened his big book of spells and flipped through the pages. After a few minutes, he found the spell he was looking for. "Aha," he said. "This regrowing spell should do the trick." Merlin waved his hands over Starlight's head and said some magical words. Starlight felt a tingling sensation on her forehead, but when she looked in the mirror, her horn was still missing. "Oh no, it didn't work," said Starlight sadly. Merlin scratched his head in confusion. "Let me see here," he said as he flipped through more pages. "Aha, this spell will reveal why your horn is missing." He waved his hands again and sparkles filled the air. Suddenly, an image appeared showing a mischievous goblin sneaking into the unicorn's forest at night. The goblin used magic to remove Starlight's horn. "Of course, it must have been the goblins," said Merlin. "They must have stolen your horn, Starlight. We should go speak with them right away to get it back." So Starlight and Merlin ventured into the goblin forest to confront the tricky thieves. When they arrived, the Goblin King was sitting smugly on his throne with Starlight's horn on display next to him. "Well, well, what have we here?" "Come to beg for your precious horn back, unicorn," cackled the goblin. "Please give me my horn back, I need it to use my magic," pleaded Starlight. The Goblin King pretended to think it over. I'll tell you what. I will give you a chance to complete 3 challenges. If you succeed, I will return what is yours." Starlight bravely accepted the challenge. The first test was a race through the rocky hills against the fastest goblins. With Merlin's encouragement, Starlight galloped swiftly and won. The second challenge was a bake-off against the goblin chef. Starlight whipped up a stellar strawberry cake with her magic touch and emerged victorious. For the third challenge, the Goblin King demanded Starlight and Merlin solve his magical maze. After many wrong turns, dead ends, and puzzles, the two made it through using their combined wisdom. The Goblin King was shocked they passed all 3 tests. "Well, you have bested me fair and square. I suppose I have no choice now but to return your horn," he admitted. The king placed the beautiful, rainbow-colored horn back onto Starlight's head where it belonged. Starlight joyfully thanked the Goblin King. Then she and Merlin returned to the Unicorn Forest to celebrate with her friends. She told them the tale of her missing horn and the challenges she faced to get it back. Starlight put on a magical light show under the stars for all the unicorns to demonstrate her restored powers. They danced around happily now that Starlight could make magic again. She learned to never take her special horn for granted. From that day forward, Starlight kept her horn extra safe so she would never lose her magic again.